Good morning, everyone. It's great to be here. I'm glad you waited. Good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning. You know what? The other day, I went to the bookstore and I asked the clerk, I said, do you have the latest Donald Trump book on how to deport illegal aliens? And the clerk said, get the hell out of here and don't come back. I said, that's the one. Do you have it in paperback? So now you know how I feel about the border situation. It's great to be here. My name is Curtis Hill. For those of you who don't know, I spent a career as a prosecuting attorney in Elkhart County, tough as nails prosecutor. Then I was your Indiana Attorney General fighting for your freedom. Had a great time in that position. Now I'm running for governor. And the reason I'm running for governor is that I am convinced that Hoosiers like you are hungry for proven conservative leadership. And when I talk about proven leadership, that means it. How do you know? How many of you have supported and elected folks into office who said one thing and did another? How many times have you been disappointed with Republican mediocrity? It happens over and over again. We want to fight. You are here on a Saturday morning because you're fighters. You want to elect fighters, and you're not getting that from your folks. Our federal government has let us down. Folks that we send to Washington, D.C. let us down. Throw up their hands and say, I can't do enough. We need to elect bold, courageous leaders here in this state who will fight for our freedom here and also take on the bad guys in D.C. That's what I'm prepared to do. Folks, we're seeing a country where absolute truth is under assault on a regular basis. Truth, basic truth. All of us have lost faith in our institutions, particularly since 2020. We've seen the manipulation of justice, the weaponization of race, and the sexualization of our children, which is destroying the fabric of who we are as a nation. We need to rise up and fight back. The first place it begins is when people who run for office don't just take their word for it. Folks will come up to run for office and will give you a laundry list of conservative bullet points. I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, I'm this, I'm that, I'm this, I'm that. And it sounds great. Here's one of them that you might hear out on the trail sometime. We're going to keep boys out of girls' locker rooms. And we all clap and scream and go crazy, right? But the question you have to ask yourself is, if a candidate makes that statement, what about that candidate makes you believe that that candidate can get it done? What about that candidate makes you believe that that person can get it done? That's what the kind of leadership you need to be looking for. Who will get the job done? Because I'll tell you what happens. Anybody running for office has a whole list of things that they want to do. But you know what the reality is? About 90% of what you deal with as an elected official comes at you on the fly. You weren't planning on it, you weren't prepared for it, and it comes up and bites you in the tail. You better know how to deal with it. I'll give you an example. 2020, the pandemic. Came out of nowhere. And did our governor's administration handle it correctly?
No.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And that should be a test, an indicator. One of the questions that you want to ask anybody running for office who was in office in 2020 is, what did you do? What did you do? What was your position? How did you stand? Did you allow things to just roll along? Or did you stand up when you saw tyranny facing you down? I believe in America. That's why you're here this morning, because you believe in America as well. I believe in freedom. I believe in a culture of life. But here's where it starts. Don't just take my word for it. What have I done to establish my belief system? Well, when 2,411 Indiana aborted babies were found discovered in the garage in the state of Illinois back in 2019, you remember that? Discovered in the garage in the state of Illinois. As your Attorney General at the time, I took action. Keep in mind, there was no statutory responsibility for the Attorney General in Indiana to do anything. There was no constitutional authority to do something. We went into Illinois on our own because it was the right thing to do. We opened up a 6-month investigation, cataloged the fetuses, brought them back to the state of Indiana, picked out a burial place, had a marked grave. I officiated over the services myself. Why did we do that? We did that to establish their humanity in death that was denied them in life. Because we believe in a culture of life and we need to take action to preserve that life. Bold action. I believe in liberty, your liberty, freedom. And that means we fight. We fight to preserve it. I already brought up 2020. 2020 is the best indicator of what you believed as a matter of freedom and medical liberty. If you remember in 2020, 4 months after the pandemic began, the Holcomb administration issued an announcement. You remember the announcement? I'm going to mandate the wearing of masks in the state of Indiana. People aren't wearing enough masks, so we're going to make you wear masks. And if you don't wear a mask, we're going to violate you as a criminal. We're going to make you a misdemeanor. Do you remember that? Yeah. Don't forget. Don't forget. Well, on that same day, as your Attorney General, I issued an order. The governor has no authority under the emergency order to establish a mask mandate in the state of Indiana. Has no constitutional authority to create a piece of legislation that makes it a criminal offense. And you know what happened? He backed down. Standing up in the face of tyranny. You want leadership that will take on the government when the government is wrong. That's called defending and fighting for liberty. And ladies and gentlemen, I believe in truth. Truth. Isn't it weird that we actually have to stand up and talk about truth? Objective truth. You know, a few years ago, the Bureau of Motor Vehicles, under the Holcomb administration, created a new, I should say a third gender. A third, did you know there were 3? They came up with a third gender. They called it the X. And there are actually people driving around in the state of Indiana with a driver's license that has an X on it instead of boy and girl. Now they did this under their rule-making authority. And under the rule-making process, it had to come through the Attorney General's office, and I got to review it for form and substance, or form and legality. I shot it down. The reason I shot it down is that the truth is there are only 2 genders, male and female, and that's worth fighting for. You know, folks, there's so much going on in this state that you need to be aware of. We are all conservatives here, and we think that we love our state. We love the direction that we want to go in. But there's things that you have to know about in the state. How many of you have given the permission for the state of Indiana to sell your personal information to other people? Anybody? No. Well, your Bureau of Motor Vehicles, I'll pick on them again, has been selling your personal data to third parties. Did you know that? Last year, they made $26 million selling your stuff. Now, I find this repulsive. When I was Attorney General, I actually sued companies that had data breaches that exposed your personal information to third parties. One in particular, I settled for $20 million. And then I find out that our own state is not just giving it away, is actually selling it. Do you approve of this? No. The other funny thing about this is that there have been Democrat legislators that have tried to stop it. Democrats have tried to put a stop to this process. And you know who's stopping them? Republican leadership. Something is very, very wrong when Republicans are not standing for privacy and freedom. So as your governor, I've got a plan. If the legislature's not going to take action, I'll take action, because the Bureau of Motor Vehicles is an executive branch agency. They work for the governor. I will simply direct the commissioner of the Bureau of Motor Vehicles, no longer will you sell personal information of Hoosiers without their consent. We can do it like that. That's how easy leadership is. And another thing I'll tell you, on the first day of my term as your governor in 2025, I've already determined the first thing I'm going to do. I'm going to pull the state of Indiana out of the diversity, inclusion, and equity game. Now, it's not that I don't believe in diversity. I do believe in diversity. Diversity is a wonderful thing, but not at the cost of excellence. Inclusion is a wonderful thing, but not at the cost of competence. Equity is a wonderful thing, but not at the cost of fairness. We don't need to have the state sponsor and check-the-box mentality to make us look right when we have the opportunity to be right as well. I mean, for example, I would say that there's no one in here that feels that they're racist. Is that right? I mean, what's a racist? A racist is someone who prejudges people, right, based on race. Well, I won't talk about you. Let me pick on myself for a moment. If I'm walking down the street and I see some black guy with pants hanging down his pants, you see the crack of his tail, you know the one I'm talking about? Yeah. Hat on backwards, dreadlocks, bebop along. I'm thinking gangbanger, drug dealer. Sorry. That's what I'm thinking. Or if I see a white guy, bald head, tattoos on his knuckles, all up his neck, on his head, I'm thinking white supremacist. I'm stepping across the street. Sorry. Now the guy could be a Sunday school teacher for all I know. But that's what I'm thinking. Why am I thinking that way? Because we are conditioned to summarize people based on what we see, what we think, what we believe we know. We all do it. Let's suppose, anybody here would like to win $25,000? Okay, if you want to win $25,000, we're going to play a little game. And I'm going to have you guess or solve a really difficult math problem. Would you like to solve a really difficult math problem for $25,000? If you give me a calculator. Well, I'm going to give you some help. I'm going to give everybody an opportunity for some help. And you get to pick which category of help. You can have help from 3 white guys or 3 Asians. Who are you picking? Who are we picking? Asians. We're picking the Asians. Well, now why are we picking the Asians?
Because they're usually smart.
They're usually smart.
They're educated.
They're educated. We're saying the same things. We think that Asians are smart, right? 3 white kids, 3 Asian kids, go with the Asians. Oh, the Asians are smart. Now, that's not a bad thing to say that about Asians, is it? Well, you're thinking that's a compliment. We're saying Asians are smart. What are we doing? We are prejudging other people based on their race. Isn't that a prejudice? We all have a tendency to do these things. Now, the point of, well, before I get to the point, I'll give you a way out. Say $25,000 prize, but then now we're going to go to the park shooting baskets. We got 5 white guys and 5 black guys. Who are you taking? Very good. These ladies have obviously seen me before. But that's the point. We can, through a simple short little exercise, we can have a really truthful talk about race and really get to the issues. We can start talking about how we can empathize with attitudes and get some real work done instead of this check the box identity politics that really makes people resentful, if nothing else. That's what we have the opportunity to do. And you need candidates, you need elected officials who understand this, who can dive into this, because we need to pull this nation together. We do not need to celebrate diversity, ladies and gentlemen. We need to take our diverse backgrounds and create unity. We need to bring this nation together. And ultimately, we need candidates that will do that. We have a war on our hands. We have a war that we need to man up and fight. But when we're done with that war, we need to be able to bring people together and save our state and save our nation. This election is about courage. When you're identifying who's running for governor, and you've got some good people, but you've got 3 people in the race who've never served in an elective capacity before. I'm not saying that that's a bad thing per se. I'm saying that you have no idea what they are going to do based on what they've done, because they have no record. So it's a crapshoot. It's a guess. You might guess correctly, but you might not. But you do have 3 people in this race that do have a track record. You have myself as Attorney General. You have the Lieutenant Governor, Suzanne Crouch. And you have Senator Mike Braun. We have a track record. You need to review. Do I have a time limit? Yeah. Oh. I thought you were grading me.
A 3-pointer.
I was going to say, where's the 10? You gave me a 3. I'm thinking, what am I?
It was 3 out of 3, though.
You've got 3 folks in this race who have elected experience. And so what you have to look at is when the Lieutenant Governor gives you a long laundry list of things that she'll do, and she will give you a long laundry list of things that she will do, You have to ask yourself, is there something about her background or her belief system that makes me think she will do these things? Will she get this done? Can she get this done? She's the one who talks about the boys and girls bathrooms. And my question to her is on that BMV issue with the X on the driver's license. When I go to the license branch, the governor's picture and the lieutenant governor's pictures are up on the wall. That means they control the BMV. If you can take boys out of girls' bathrooms, you certainly can stop the X on the driver's license, and that wasn't done. So those are the kind of questions that I would ask in terms of leadership. And then with Mike Braun, I think you have to ask the question, why are you leaving the Senate, Mike? Why are you leaving the Senate? We sent Mike Braun to Washington, D.C. to fight for us. I sent him to fight. He's stopping and saying, in his own words, he's not running for Senate again because he's not getting anything done.
Wow.
That's sort of telling to me. That's telling to me. So what's he going to do here? Those are the questions that you need to ask going forward. From my perspective, I've got the history. I'm a fighter. When you're a fighter, when you're the most conservative person in the state, when you've got 1.6 million voters behind you, I had 80,000 more votes than Donald Trump in 2016. And what that did was a great achievement, but it put an X on my back. Because right away you get targeted for takedown. But the only thing that you do is when you respond, you stand back up and you fight even harder. And so we're back fighting even harder because we want to make Indiana the safest place to raise a family, the smartest place to start a business. Indiana it should be the heartbeat of the nation. We are certainly at the heart of the physical nation. We need to be the heart of the nation, the spiritual heart of the nation. And we can do this by getting it right, by getting truth right, by getting justice right, by getting our heads right on race, by eliminating the sexual assault on our children, preserving our state for families. We have a lot to do, but it takes leadership, folks. And so what you have to look at is, make up in your mind, are you looking at the man who has what it takes to get the job done? If you feel that way, then I would proudly accept your vote on May 7th. Thank you very much, and God bless you.
Does anybody have any questions for Curtis?
IEDC, what would you do with it?
Say that again, please.
IEDC, what would you do with it?
At the very least, we put a major thumb on them. The issue becomes, do we get rid of them altogether? IEDC is a shadow government. They are running the show. The Economic Development Corporation is running the show in this entire state, joined by the Indiana Chamber. And they are forcing things forward. This project they have up in Boone County is a prime example. That's a taking. That's a taking. They're picking winners and losers. They're acting as a developer. There's a place for an economic development corporation to be able to provide assistance and guidance and assist the entire state. There's a process there. That's gone long and far away from that process. So it needs to be at least retooled, if not removed.
Yes or no answer? Is the 2020 election stolen?
I can't answer that with a yes or no. It's too complicated. What I can say is this. There were many anomalies with what happened in the 2020 election. And keep in mind, I'm a prosecutor, so I go by evidence, and I don't have the physical specific evidence moving forward. What I do know is that I went to bed at 2 in the morning with President Trump being reelected, and I woke up at 8:30 or 9, and he wasn't. And so something happened. Now there's a whole laundry list of anomalies that are actual factual things that occurred that get you that you don't even get to the point of whether it was stolen or not that actually occurred. The problem that we have is that we have a fractured process of elections, and I'm not calling for national elections. That's not the answer. But we have to address the mail-in ballots. We have to address the fact that every day that you move away from election day is a greater increase for fraud. If you have election day voting, you have securities that are in place to prevent fraud. Every day you move away from that, you increase the odds of fraudulent behavior. So we need to be very wary of that. I've had people who say, well, do you support paper ballots? Because that's the answer. Whether we get paper ballots or not is not the answer. The answer, if you have paper ballots and you have somebody who's willing to engage in fraud and use those paper ballots in a fraudulent manner, you will still have fraud. So it's much more than what the mechanism is. We have to have procedural safeguards. Indiana does, one of the things that Indiana has done right for a number of years is voter ID.
Yes.
Voter ID is a fantastic idea. I travel around a fair amount in other states, helping other states get their voter ID on the books, and we had to fight it. We had to fight this whole accusation of racism, suggesting that voter ID was detrimental to black voters. And I said, I know a whole lot of black people, and they all have driver's licenses. I don't know anybody who doesn't have an ID. You need an ID to do everything. So this idea that, well, we can't have voter ID because it hurts black people, that's an insult to black people. That's suggesting that black people are either too stupid or it's just ridiculous. But you know, you've got folks like Stacey Abrams down in Georgia making these crazy claims. So we needed to have people who could stand up and oppose those kind of positions. So we do have significant problems with regard to fraud in elections across the board. And it's here in Indiana as well. Don't think that we're that safe. There's things that we need to be doing to improve that. Other questions?
We have a lot of investment in Indiana right now. And some of it is right here in Clark County. My question is, how does that investment, what's the bottom line? How is that investment in Indiana affecting me as a taxpayer? Are we paying more to get it here we're going to get back? I don't hear that anyway. Nobody talks about the benefits, but nobody explains what it's going to do, what's the taxpayer putting up. Abatements, I don't know what.
Yeah, what's the general nature of the question is, what's the benefit to me, the common guy, for all of this out-of-state investment that comes into our state? I think that's a great question, and the answer is I don't know. We send in, we put this thing out there that says we want all this business to come in. We need these jobs, we need these industries, and so we make these promises that are ridiculous. We sort of forget the folks that brought us here. Our local businesses are working out well. You keep paying taxes, but we're going to bring these new operations in. We're going to abate their taxes, and half the time you don't even get the remunerations that were promised. So I think it's a mess. We need to focus on bringing businesses and industry to Indiana that want to be a part of Indiana. We don't need to be bringing businesses here that want us to change to be like them. And that's typically what the Indianapolis crowd wants. Indianapolis will look for businesses. We want to be tech. We want to be tech savvy. So let's bring Silicon Valley. We want to be like Silicon Valley. Well, we might want their business, but we don't want their attitude.
Thank you.
So if in order to attract a Silicon Valley tech business in Indiana, we have to have their value system, that California vibe. No thanks. We don't need that. But too many of our leaders are willing to give up who we are to impress you and say, look, we brought in 100 new jobs, 500 new jobs, 1,000 new jobs, but we lost our soul in the meantime. That's what's happening. So what does that mean? No businesses that come in? No, absolutely not. It means that if you are a business wanting to come to Indiana, come check us out. Come see what makes us Hoosiers. Come see why we are who we are. And if you want to be like us, bring your business on in. We'll welcome you. If you don't want to be like us, then go to New York, go to Chicago, go wherever you want to go, and we'll be just fine here.
Yeah.
Curtis, when elected, will you work with conservative legislators like Zach, like myself, like John, to divorce ourselves from a lot of this federal overreach and reject these federal dollars that are placing restrictions on us that are extra constitutional and very inappropriate for our state?
Absolutely, absolutely we'll do that. When I was Attorney General, I was one of the AGs that sued Obamacare. We went after federal initiatives all the time. And that, if you look at our education system, one of the worst things about our education system is our adherence to the Federal Department of Education. I would love to see, we want to encourage local schools to quit taking the money, because the Federal Department of Education is like a giant crack dealer. They give you some crack to sample on, and they get you hooked. And then they give you more crack and more crack. And that's what they do, that's the education system. They dangle this money. They say, oh, we've got millions of dollars because you need this money. But with this money comes this program. And we've given you the money so you can use that money to administer our program. And I asked one of our local superintendents up north once, I said, how much of your budget is federal dollars coming in? He said 7%. I said, how much of what you do is pertaining to getting or maintaining that 7%? He said over 50%. Now, I don't have to have a public school education mathematics mind to figure out that if you cut that 7% out, pretty soon your 50% will start coming away because you're not doing all the crazy stuff. Like for example, bullying programs. I don't want to make light of bullying programs too much. But when I was a kid, if somebody bullied me, I'd kick their tail on the playground, or I'd go tell my teacher, I'd go tell my dad. That's how we dealt with stuff. We didn't have a cottage industry of psychologists and programs and things on the wall and all this stuff that you have to do now. Well, somebody's paying for that, and that's you and me. So we have to stop, to your point, the Department of Education is a prime example of where federal dollars come in and is screwing up our ability to deal with things on a local basis.
Absolutely.
Now, having said that, it's not just the federal stuff, we do it at the state level too. The Indiana Department of Education has 250 personnel on their staff, and third graders still can't read. So I'm thinking, why don't we just slice that in half? Because most of what they do with the Indiana Department of Education is facilitate federal grants. So if we don't have too many federal grants, we can get rid of those folks and start focusing on what we want to do locally from an education standpoint. So yes, we will work with the General Assembly specifically on identifying ways that we can pull the federal government out of our paws and direct our own path. What's great about that is we then have local accountability. Because as long as we're dealing with the federal government, somebody can always point the finger, and some of our friends in the General Assembly will say this, well, but that's a federal thing. The feds made us do that. No, we need to take responsibility for our own actions. And when we get rid of the federal government, it's all on us, and so we better get it right.
I look forward to working with you next year, Curtis.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. Any other questions?